Welcome, everybody, to the Home Services Summit and our little webinar series. As you know, on the first Thursday of every month, we have the pleasure of having a guest on and talk live about business and life, accomplishments, things they've done, things we can learn from. In this case, we've got James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy from Utah, here that we'll talk about some of the things he's experienced over the last decade of I don't know what you want to call it, like self
Insanity?
mastery, self insanity. Yeah, yeah, just craziness. And we're gonna get into it. But before we start, I want to just highlight the fact that these sessions are great. They're live, as you know. You're welcome in the chat to go ahead and interact with us as we're speaking. At the end, I'll save about 15 minutes for any questions you may have for James to talk about or ask him about what he's accomplished or what he's done or what he's experienced. Being in the franchising game, there's we always have an annual convention every year where we bring all our franchisees together, and the objective there is to inspire them to reach in, do more, grow their business. And we just had ours a few months ago, and it's really hard to find quality speakers that can engage and inspire an audience. And I've actually had the opportunity to see James actually spoke at an event I hosted a few years ago called it was called Alchemy, and we had about, I don't know, a couple hundred, maybe 300-400 entrepreneurs in Utah. I don't know if you remember this, James. It was like 4 or 5 years ago.
I was going to say that was more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a few years ago, before you did your 100 Ironman or 100 full length triathlons in 100 days. But we did a little 5K run one morning together, and then we heard you speak. Your message was inspiring. Actually, you also spoke at an event I was at. I think it was in Vancouver, where it was called GLC, the Global Learning Convention, for EO, and you came there and gave your message about what you'd experienced, and it was once again super inspiring. So secretly, I've always had this crush on you and wanting to have you on my show and talk about some of the things you've accomplished. So we're gonna jump into that experience. So let me just go ahead and tee this up a little bit, give you some background on what James has done, and then we'll get into his backstory and let you guys ask any questions you'd like. So James is known as the Iron Cowboy. This is the nickname that he received from the public after he started to wear a cowboy hat during races to be recognized by his children. Originally from Calgary, Canada, go Canadians. He now lives in Utah with his wife, Sunny, and their 5 children. With 2 Guinness World Records under his belt, James and his family attempted to do something every person deemed impossible, the 50-50-50. But that didn't fulfill him, and as of June 8th, 2021, James completed what the team likes to call the Conquer 100, 100 consecutive full-distance triathlons. This journey was created to empower people around the world to do their own hard. Sports Illustrated ranked James in the top 50 fittest freaks, with LeBron James and Conor McGregor, 2 of James's favorite athletes. Red Bull declares that when it comes to endurance, he is the unstoppable, and Success magazine named him the most enduring man in the world. He has redefined the definition of impossible, defied logic, and is here today to share his journey with you. Perfect. Well said. And I love the introduction. So James, why did you want to wear a cowboy hat when you were running? I guess I can see why people would want to call you the Iron Cowboy, but why the cowboy hat? Because you're from Alberta?
Yeah, no, that's the assumption, right? But I didn't want to wear a cowboy hat. I have 5. When I first started my journey, I had 5 little kids. I still have kids, but they're much bigger now. In fact, tonight we're celebrating my oldest daughter's wedding. So tonight's the open house, which
congratulations.
Is incredible to be at that point in my life. It makes me definitely feel old. But when I first started, my kids were super young. I'm talking 3 to 10. And Ironman racing is the least friendly spectator sport on the planet. And, the kids have been the part of this whole journey. And as you watch our documentaries, read our books, follow us on social media, you really see that this is a family thing. And we all look the same out on the race course. We're all, dressed the same, on the same bikes, doing the same things. And as a racer, you want to get that energy from your support team. And they want to see dad or mom or whoever is racing. And my kids always made these signs for me. And a lot of times I'd miss them. I didn't see them. They were little and in the crowd. And so I started to wear a cowboy hat that they would pick out. I mean, I have every color of cowboy hat. I've got a leopard one. Because I've got 4 girls, they were picking my cowboy hats so that I would stand out from the crowd. And then all of a sudden they could see me, and then they could pop out, hold up their sign. I could stop, give them all high fives. And then the public started to call me the Iron Cowboy, which is totally ridiculous because I'm allergic to horses and hay. And so this is just humorous to me, but it's turned it into an entire brand. In fact, this logo right here is our logo. It's the beard and the cowboy hat on the top. And it's just become an iconic logo for us and what it symbolizes and stands for.
You know, I love about what you just shared there is you have involved your family, your kids, and I actually had the chance to hear Sunny, your wife, speak at an event last year down at Zion's at White Buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
And she told a story that was, for me, really eye-opening as a person that was supporting you, but also has her own story. Like, she's a triathlete herself. She's an accomplished athlete. She's an amazing runner, biker, swimmer, and yet she really put that on pause to support you in fulfilling your dreams and pursuing your dreams. And I was like super inspired. My wife was with me as well there, and super inspired in hearing that. But I love for you to just dive into us, if you don't mind. How did you why did you involve your family? Did you do this to involve your family? What are the takeaways from that? Like, what has it done for your family?
Yeah, I'm family first. And when I first started putting all the pieces to the puzzle and doing these things, when I first started, my kids were really young and didn't know the difference. But then when we started to do the 50, which was 50 Ironmans, 50 days, 50 states, I wasn't going to do it without my family because they're a huge reason and motivation and driving force for me. And I'm family first. And so we try to involve them in everything we're doing. Plus, we thought it'd be an amazing opportunity to give them a front row seat to what it looks like to commit to something, what it looks like to follow through something, what it looks like to go through the wide range of emotions you do when you're struggling and suffering, and also the victorious moments. I think kids need to see that firsthand. I didn't want to be the type of parent that says, do what I say. No, I'm going to try to lead from the front. I'm going to try to set the example. And as it turns out, man, 15, 20 years later, I have 5 unbelievable kids who, if I look at the landscape, they are head and shoulders above everybody else in this space because nobody's willing to show up. Nobody's willing to do the work. And so it's been the greatest gift to involve them in the journey. I mean, Lucy, my oldest, is now the CEO of our company and runs everything. And so it's just been full circle to have her be part of that and continue to want to be part of it.
Who modeled that for you, or was it just something that you and Sunny just designed together? Like, did your father involve you in what he did with his business, or like what made you think, well, this is something I need to do?
Yeah, actually, it was my parents. Sometimes they set the best example for you, and sometimes you want to do the opposite of what was modeled for you. And my dad's incredible, but he was a blue collar firefighter, worker, electrician. I mean, dude worked hard and sacrificed a lot for the family, but I really didn't get to know him, and I really didn't get to be part of his journey and learn a lot from him. And then my mom was amazing and a homemaker. And so I really developed, like, I'm a mama's boy, and developed a great relationship with my mom. But I think it was just Sunny and I who band together. And she also grew up with 8 siblings and a kind of a disengaged mother and father. And both of us were like, that's not what we want. We want family first. This is our new family. And I always see people that are on like these entrepreneur journeys and doing these big things, and they're like, I'm going to wait to have family and kids. And I'm like, no, man, that's just an excuse. You'll never be ready to have kids, and in fact, they enhance whatever you're doing. And kids are here to teach us to grow and have compassion and empathy, which translates into everything else we're doing in life. And so we just found a way and put it at the forefront of importance to us to involve them. And it's just been such a wild journey. And I've got 5 best friends plus my wife, who's amazing.
You know, it's as you were saying that, I had the good fortune. My father was an entrepreneur, and he used to bring me to business meetings randomly. We'd go have a lunch meeting with somebody, and he just would have me tag along and just eat lunch and take notes. And then he would take me on the odd business trip with him. So we'd go to New York together on some meeting, and I would do the same thing. I would just sit there like a fly on the wall and watch what was happening and just kind of absorb what was going on. And I'm the second of 7 kids, and he did his best to involve us all. There's a lot of us. You know, we took turns on these little trips. But it was something that I've since now that model was done for me, and now I've involved my kids. I try and bring my kids at some franchising meeting I'm at, or annual convention, or whatever, and incorporate. Hopefully, through by osmosis, they can learn something about my journey, and whether they decide to be an entrepreneur or a franchisee or a franchisor or whatever it is, that's totally up to them. at least they can get that education. So I love that. I love that you do that.
Yeah, what's truly amazing is, children, they're products of our environments. And so even though you think they're not watching you, they're watching everything. They're listening to everything, and they end up doing what you say you do. It's not an accident that a lot of, unfortunately, addiction and other things that are happening, that's modeled, and it's generational abuse, and all these things get passed on because they're just there. They're in the environment and they're modeling what their parents do. And so really a challenge to anybody who has kids is like, you have to show up with relentless pursuit and a high level of honesty and integrity, because your kids are watching and they're the future,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to be a future representative of you. And so, I mean, it's just so important to leave that legacy.
Well, let's get back to your origin story, because every superhero has one, and so we're gonna jump into yours. You said 50, 50, 50, and I want to make sure that everyone here that's listening kind of understands exactly what you just said. And before we do, like, has anyone ever done anything like this before, James? Like, when you thought of doing 50 Ironmen in 50 states in 50 days, right? I got that right.
Mhm.
50 Ironmen, 50 states, 50 days. Has anyone ever tried doing something like that before? Like, what made you decide you wanted to do that?
Yeah, it was so funny. Just last night, my wife and I were having the conversation in terms of looking back on our journey, and the timing of it was just so perfect because nobody really was doing this kind of thing. And if I look way back in the history, in my history as a person being alive, I grew up in Canada, and there was a gentleman named Terry Fox who was battling cancer, and dude
Yeah.
started to run across the country. And there's an amazing 30 for 30 on ESPN if you want to dive into his story. And then more recently, Dean Karnazes, who was he's called Ultra Endurance Man. He ran 50 marathons in 50 days in 50 states. And I saw him on Good Morning America, and I saw his book and all these things, and I read it, and I was like, I was on my journey, and I'd broken the half Ironman world record and the full Ironman world record for the most in a single calendar year. The 30 was 30 Ironmans to 11 countries. And then I saw Dean do what he did, and I was like, man, this is like before social media was blowing up. Like, we were going live on Periscope on Twitter, and most people don't even know what that is. But I saw Dean do that, and I was like, man, if he did that with marathons, I wonder what would happen if I pulled that off with an Ironman. Because not an Ironman, for those of you that don't know, it starts with a 2.4 mile swim. The middle is a 112-mile bike ride, and it finishes with a full marathon run. So I would have done over 114 miles prior to doing the marathon. And it would, in my mind, I was just like, that would be so unbelievable and outlandish that when we announced it, everybody said impossible, can't be done. I mean, 7 consecutive weeks, no days off, 7,030 miles. And then you add in the enormity of the United States, the logistics, having to put on 50 events, driving through the night, doing it again the next day, entering moments of chaos and confusion, new people, new surroundings, the uncertainty of weather and food and inclement and everything that happens along the way. Like, that's what we were facing with
I just
5
don't even,
under the age of 11.
I
They
don't
came
know how even 5 consecutive. I didn't know there was 50 consecutive Ironmen to go do. Like, how how do you even do that?
Yeah, no, I just said it. They were our own events that we put on, because there's only
Oh, okay. Okay, got
there's
it.
only like 5 total in the United States, and they're scattered out throughout the year in the Ironman brand. And so
Got it. Yeah.
we put on, like, think about that. We put on and organized 50 events that people could come and participate with, on top of doing the logistics, on top of doing the physical feat, on top of bringing your family. Like you start to really dive deep into
Oh
what
my
that
gosh.
look like. It gets astronomical in terms of scope.
Yeah. Like, how what an entrepreneurial endeavor. It's one thing to be an athlete and to do something as difficult as an Ironman just once, to do it 50 times, but then to actually have the vision to create something like that. I didn't realize you were actually organizing helping organize or organizing some of these events. How do you, what
I
did
had
your organization look like? Who was on your team? How do you pull it together?
Okay, when you have no credibility or limited credibility, when you're on the beginning of your journey, when you don't have a team, when you're financially broke because you lost everything in the economy crash, and you owned a mortgage company, guess what? You wear 500 hats. And I was doing fundraising, I was doing sponsorships, I was doing web design, I was doing course creation, I was doing logistics, I was doing all of it. My wife was in school full time and she was raising our 5 little kids. She graduated the week before we went on this journey with her psychology degree. I'm telling you, man, there's just so many levels and layers to entrepreneurship. And most people are not willing to do what it takes and to wear all those hats until they start to get the resources and connections and team and some financial, all those things. Like you got to be willing to grind and do what it takes in order to make the dream happen. And just, dude, it's such a shit show on Instagram and social media right now, and glorifying and glamorizing the entrepreneurship journey, man. They just have no clue. It's just all fake. It's all lies. It takes 10 times longer than you think, and it takes 20 times the bankroll than you think.
Yeah. You're saying you're speaking truth, which I think we all need to hear and be reminded of. I think many of us on this call can think of the moments in time as an entrepreneur or a business owner where it's like, there's those darkest hours. It sounds like you've had a few of those. If you don't mind, just take us back to the beginning when you decide you want to do this and you can't, like, when did it go? When did the light bulb come on? And when the light bulb came on, like, had you already been doing Ironman? Is this something that you were kind of a fan of, and it was like you already were kind of prepped to go and do something like this? Like, how do you train for something like that? How do you know you have the capacity to do something like that?
Yeah, I don't think we ever know that we have the capacity. We just have to have that belief and then start throwing mud on the wall. I mean, I was deep into the sport. When we lost everything in 2008, that's actually when I did my first Ironman. I was already scheduled to do it, and then my world fell apart. But I fell in love with the sport, the challenge of it, the length of it. NBC Sports calls it the most single challenging day in sports. And when I did my first one, I was like, that is incredible. And I just want to, I can do that better. And I want to adapt and evolve and grow, and just as a hobby. And I was chasing my passion. And that's really something that people aren't doing today. They're focused on the outcome or a desired outcome or where they think it's going to take them. And they're doing things that don't really fulfill them or is their passion. Like I said, when we first started doing this, the word influencer didn't even exist. That space was in development. And we were honestly doing it because we loved to do it. We were coaching athletes. And as my entrepreneur mind was going, I was like, okay, how do I separate myself as a leader in this sport? And from the competition so that I can grow my business. I never set out to be an author. I never set out to be a speaker. Podcasts were so far and few between. Like, this isn't what I set out to do. It was truly, I was just living my passion and trying to help other people experience that same joy that I was every time I crossed the finish line. And so that's really how it all started. It was just my natural organic journey that I was thriving through that just blew up and took over everything we were doing and has now turned into a 7-figure business.
That's a congratulations. That's exciting. When you said earlier that you started this as a means to try and kind of differentiate yourself. Were you thinking that in the context of, this might help me in my mortgage company? Like, by doing this is going to help me in another business? Or are you feeling, go ahead.
No, I had lost the mortgage company and been racing for years and winning races locally. And so people were reaching out to me on the coaching side of things. And so we had started a triathlon coaching business and a personal training business. And so that's what I was trying to do to separate myself from others. And so broke that world record for the half Ironmans in a year and then the full. And then all of a sudden everything blew up, the coaching company and everything else that we were doing. Did the 50, got pushed into the speaking space, was very new to it. And I've been doing it professionally for 10 years. And it's just been the greatest gift. We just yesterday was on an amazing call where our next book, Iron Hope, was fully approved by the publisher, and it's just going to be so cool to have that come out. Our new documentary, our second documentary, full documentary, is coming out. It's going to be on Netflix and Apple TV and all the streaming platforms. We're doing a private red carpet premiere. March 27th here at Sundance Resort in Utah. It's like, you can't like predict these things. You just have to show up and chase your passions and do the work. And all of a sudden you're looking back 20 years later and your life is completely different.
So you said I couldn't agree more. Are you like you mentioned, we talked earlier, we're just exchanged texts. You said you were out for a long run. Are you still like game ready? Like today, if I said, James, let's go do an Ironman, you'd be like, yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. I had to take 2 years off from the Conquer 100, which we'll talk about. But my body was broken. My brain was broken. I actually had to get my brain refixed, rewire the neurological pathways of my brain. I was stuck in constant space of fight or flight. I couldn't get to parasympathetic. I broke my back on day 59 of the Conquer 100 and did 41 Ironmans with a cracked L5 vertebrae. And so it took me a long time to recover from that. But I'm now at a space where I'm like refired up, re-energized. My brain is fixed. My body's coming back. I'm doing 2 world championships this year. In 5 weeks, I'm headed to South Africa to do the hardest mountain bike race in the world. It's called Cape Epic, 8 grueling days through South Africa. So yeah, man, I'm game ready. I'm going to produce some of the fastest times I've done in my entire career. And over the next 2 years, I'll be the best shape I've ever been in as I approach 50 years old.
I just, when I hear that, so I just did my very first marathon of my life. I've done a couple of triathlons and things, but my daughter challenged me to a marathon this last year. So I said yes. It was the Manitoba Marathon. The best way of doing it, right? Trained in Utah at 4,200 feet, and then went down to about 1,000 feet for the run. She actually finished second in her age group for women, and did really, really well. So like, was so excited for her and that I could be there for her. But in that process, I was signing up for my next marathon with my other daughter, which I was going to do in October in St. George. And I developed plantar fasciitis. And I actually couldn't help but think, like, what would the Iron Cowboy do? I've not been able to run. I can't train. I can barely, like, my feet are just on fire very often. And I thought, how do you push through stuff like that? And what are some moments in time when you are doing the Conquer 100 or the 50-50-50 where you felt like, that's it, I'm throwing the towel in, I'm done? And like, how do you get past that?
Yeah, it's through experience and understanding what's an injury, what's pain, what you can work through, what your body's telling you through those aches and pains. Offline, I can completely navigate you through that. You can start running again tomorrow and get on the other side of plantars. Every new runner experiences IT pain and plantar fasciitis, both just things that you can continue to run through and fix as you're doing it and as your body's adapting and evolving. And that's the biggest thing, is recognizing that it's an adaptation process. And if you give your body or your mind the tools that you need, you can overcome anything. Like I said, I broke my back, crashed violently on day 59 of 100 consecutive, and did 41 more with that level of pain and discomfort, because I understood I could control my mind at where I put my focus and attention, and it wasn't on the pain. It was to raise money for human beings that are being sex trafficked today. And so we all get to choose where we take our minds and where we put our focus, and then do the work behind the scenes to fix whatever is broken or that's ailing us. And it's all inside the realm of your brain and your experiences that you've had.
Dan, thanks for joining us. She had a question here, or a comment, and I think this is coming back to, your why. She said, "This is simply incredible. Congratulations. Would love to know your why and your how." Like, there's probably 2 things here we can explore, and I think I couldn't agree more with that. For the Conquer 100, let's talk about the Conquer 100. We talked about the 50-50-50. It sounds like, what would you say the why was? If you were to say there's one reason why I did that, was it about building the brand in your coaching business and it was help differentiate you, or was it something deeper than that?
No, I'd already established myself with the 50. I didn't need to do the 100 for notoriety or anything. That's not why I do these things. I don't even give a crap about any of the world records. It's a piece of paper, and Guinness is frankly a for-profit organization. Like, it'd be way more easier for me to get that piece of paper to eat as many marshmallows as I can in 1 minute. Like, that'd be way easier than 4 consecutive Ironmans.
Yeah,
but we talk about it a lot in the documentary and in our book, like the reason why. You have to have a bag of whys, and it's not just why, it's why and how and who, like you said. But to address the why, you have to attach a higher purpose or reason why you're doing something. Because I'll go back to the bike crash. When you're laying in the middle of the road, knocked unconscious, your one reason that you've thought of, or it's not going to be enough. It's frankly not going to be enough. And you have to be armed with multiple levels of why you're doing something. And in fact, it's called your ethos. And your ethos is what you stand for, black and white. And so in that moment of chaos and confusion, you've already prepared yourself for what that moment is. You know the answer. You can remove the emotion, make the decision, and keep going down the road. And for us, we always tie a massive charitable component to it. During the first world records, we were building dams in Africa, Try and Give a Dam project. In 2015, we're the first generation ever where the parents are slated to outlive the kids. We partnered with the Jamie Oliver Foundation to raise funds and awareness for the childhood obesity epidemic. I had 5 little kids in elementary school. So my why continually changes. When we did the Conquer 100, 4 teenage girls and a young son, sex trafficking was in our face. And so we raised over $1 million to free human beings that are being sex trafficked. So when you're in pain and you're suffering, you go, okay, I'm okay. I'm not being sex trafficked. I don't have a terminal illness. I can continue on this journey and manage this pain with the chance that somebody's going to be freed from their suffering that they don't know is ever going to end because of my efforts. And that's the type of why you have to have, because when you're backed in the corner and the anxiety's coming in and depression's happening and you're spiraling, like, you have to be ready for those moments or else you quit. And that's why people quit, is because they're not invested into it. It's why these influencers aren't winning, because they're doing it for the outcome, not the purpose. It's a selfish outcome they're wanting, not a purpose that's bigger and outside of themselves.
If you don't mind, could we explore this together? Because I think this is something that's in our world of franchising, there are a lot of businesses who have discovered their why and their purpose, right? And they make it very, very plain. It's everyone knows why they exist.
Well,
I think there are a lot of people. Go ahead.
Just real quick, there's a big difference between your mission statement and what your purpose is. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I want to spend time with you on, like, how. Tell me, when you were starting the planning of the Conquer 100, what's the exercise you went through, or you and your team went through, to discover your purpose or your why that was going to fuel you, and you knew you would need it because you've already experienced 50-50-50. You knew that you would need those moments of truth where you could say, no, this is why I get up and do something. What's the discovery process you went through to be able to understand that?
Yeah, for me, there was a lot of different layers, right? We always wanted to attach a charitable effort to it because we want to have impact outside of ourselves. And just at the time, that was a really natural, in our face one. My wife had a passion for it, still does. And so that became the forefront, the big ask. For me, also, it was very personal in terms of, if you watch the documentary, we didn't execute to perfection for the 50. And we made a couple controversial mistakes that was well documented, that we faced head on, and made decisions to keep going. And for me, it was very personal because I wanted to reset my own history in terms of, like, always showing up in a capacity to do better and learn from our mistakes from the past. And so this was a massive career dice roll for me. Like, for those people that are in the camp that, like, hey, you didn't really do it, this is a big dice roll, because if I fail in the first 50 days, I validate their belief system and what it was. So we executed through 50 to perfection and then went on to double it. And so it was a very personal journey for me to reset my own history and prove to myself, like, I am who I said I was, and my team is who they say they are.
And I think, didn't you also do one more right after the 100? Wasn't it 101?
Yeah.
For some reason, I remember something like this happened. Like, it's like, well, I'm going to do one more just to show you can go the extra mile or something like that.
Yeah, it's what I do as a career. I speak on stages around the world. I've just been so fortunate. I've spoken in 56 different countries. And I just thought, man, I would be a hypocrite if I got on stages and just preached that, even when you're broken, you can do one more, if I didn't flat out do it myself. And I just firmly believe that probably everybody on this call is a leader. And just like we were talking before in parenting, leaders lead, and they lead from the front. And I'll never do anything I'll never ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done or am willing to do myself.
Well, I hope you don't ever ask me to do 100 Ironman, because it's like, just because you're in the front, you've got it. It's okay. Don't ask me to do anything like that.
I'll just always ask you to do one more, whatever you're doing.
Oh yeah, whatever it is, just do one more of those. Mike has a question here, a comment as well, but let's come to him real quick. James, this sounds as much as a logistics challenge as it does an endurance challenge. How much time did you have between races, and how did you get from one race to the next in a different state? How did you get Hawaii and Alaska in that time frame?
Yeah, great question. It was a logistical nightmare. And that's actually why the 100 became into existence too, was because when I first started the 50, I truly wanted to find out how many consecutive I could do, but didn't get to find out because of the chaos, confusion, and the travel and the enormity of the United States. So it took me 2.5 years to plan this whole thing, but we had to start in Hawaii. So I started at midnight to give myself the maximum amount of time. Started at midnight, did that one, flew to Honolulu, flew to Alaska, landed right in time to start the next one. So slept a couple hours on the plane. Did Ironman number 2, jumped on an airplane, flew to Washington. Did Ironman number 3, where we all piled into a motorhome, and then started to navigate the lower 48. And literally, I had 2 young men with me, Casey and Aaron. We call them the wingmen, and their job was to help me as much as they could during the day, take naps periodically, and then drive us from the next state to the next. My family was in a motorhome, and I was on the floor of a 15-passenger Ford Econ 350. And that's what we did. We do an Ironman during the day, travel during the night, Ironman during the day. For 7 weeks, I averaged less than 4 hours of sleep a night, so no recovery, hardly any time in between each event. It was literally getting to the next one in time to start. You got to think in order to do 50 consecutive, I have to slow it down in order to not fry every muscle fiber in my body. And so you're talking about 14 to 16-hour days on your feet, on your bike, in the water, and then immediately transitioning into trying to refuel, do media spots, get in the van, and figure out where the next spot in the next state is.
Just as you're saying this, I can't help but ask this question. I've done something called 23andMe. It's a genetic test, right? It goes through and tells you all these markers you have. I don't know if you've ever done it. Some context of some family. My uncle and he's got a few kids. These are hardcore mountain bikers. There's a Trans Rockies race that's up in Canada. You may have heard of it, James. That he's done. My uncle's an incredible mountain biker. He's like 71, 72 years old now. He can still crush me out there on these trails we ride up in Manitoba. I'm from Canada, from Winnipeg, and there's some trails I ride on every summer. And there, we go for a good 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and he is just so fit. And his kids are like that. Like his kids are my cousin, is Chris Benson. He's finished in the top 3 of many races in BC, up and down some of these mountains. And I have to believe it. Some of this has got to be genetic. I just look at that and go, like, he's got something in him that I don't have, or there's something going on. And I've heard that there's a common genome that exists in almost every high performance athlete that is common to all of them. I don't know what the marker is, but I've heard this. I've done some genetic studies at some points, and that was interesting. Do you think, so let me just ask you this question, and I probably already know the answer to it, but do you think, James, like, would you say, Scott, I've always had this in me? Like, I've always had this desire to compete, desire to perform, this ability to endure things that are very, very challenging? Or would you say this is something you've nurtured, that you've developed over your lifetime?
Yeah, great question. And it's a bit of both. In fact, if you're on Instagram, go to my page, Iron Cowboy James, because it was either yesterday or the day before. I just did an hour live with a company that did an epigenetic test on me. And I've done a ton of them, but this was the newest one, newest technology. And for an hour, we dive into the results and what genetic markers I have, what my body's deficient in, how to take me from where I am today to superhuman. Because I'm still trying to figure out the best version of who I am, and I want the most advantages I have. And to do that, you got to figure out what your genetics are, what your strengths are, what your body's missing, what it's craving, what it performs best on. And man, for years, people convinced me that I was different and special, and I've got these special markers, and there really wasn't anything that stand out. He said my VO2 capacity is a little above average. I do have a power and strength gene and an endurance gene that's a little elevated than some. I don't have a gene where I'm have an ability to recover faster. In fact, he said you're on the borderline of not being super athletic, but if you put in the work, you have potential. And so that was true when I was a kid. I got into every sport, and I wasn't the best on any team when I started, but through really hard work, I became the best on every team. And so it's not like I'm not the kid that shows up that doesn't have to put in the work, that just has this insane ability. You see these freak football catches that you're just like, it doesn't matter what prep you put in, like that's just straight up athletic ability. That's never going to be. But I will you. I will put in the time. I will do the research to figure out how to optimize things the best. Um, so if you're interested, there's an entire hour breakdown of that epigenetics that's in me. It's on my Instagram. It's on the main feed right now.
Yeah, I think that'd be worthy of looking at it. There's a whole science that exists there, and I think the way you put it is nice, which is, hey, we have tools that are being developed now today that didn't exist before that can help us discover things about ourselves and help us optimize. And you're seeing that happen in a lot of different areas, which I just love seeing. Uh, I'd love for you to, James, you're in this business now of inspiring people. Clearly, what you've done has inspired tens of thousands of people. You've said 65 or 56, I can't remember, countries you've
50%.
spoken in all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all around the world. You've traveled. You've taken your message everywhere, and I know it's inspired me. In fact, I know there's some people very close to me, close friends of mine, who signed up for Ironman after hearing you speak. And these are people that I would never thought could have done an Ironman. Like it's just like, and I love it because it's people are getting healthier, fitter, and they're reaching to something that they've never been able to reach for before. If you don't mind, maybe just share with us your proudest moment, like the moment where you felt like, hey, everything that I've been doing, all this work that I've been doing, is actually meaningful. I know you've mentioned how the Conquer 100, you've donated $1 million to a very, very good cause, right? And I got to believe that there's a lot of pride that comes from that, like a sense of accomplishment. But I'd love for you to, like, are there like personal moments you'd say, Scott, there's this individual or this person or that connected to me in some way, and I saw something transformational and it made me believe in myself more and be wanting to stretch and do more because of that. Anything like that's happened to you?
Yeah, it's just been incredibly humbling to have these experiences, and I've had so many of them. Every time I get off stage, a grown woman comes up to me just in tears, saying, "You were talking directly to me with
Mm-hmm.
your message today," and even more impact when somebody emails me from an event a year later. And they said, I was so embarrassed to come up to you because I wasn't where I needed to be in my life. And since hearing you, these are the changes that I've made, and you saved my life. And so, like, I'm super proud of those moments that our team's willingness to show up and suffer intentionally. It's what's giving people hope on the journey where they're dealing with things they haven't asked for, which is called life. And that's why we're naming the next book that's going to be released. It's called Iron Hope, because it's truly what's happening through our efforts and what we're seeing, and those are my favorite moments to where I'm like, this is all worth it.
Yeah, I got to believe that's got to be so fulfilling. I know from personal experience, being a franchisor, right? I'm in the business of helping people get into business. That's what I do. I've been doing it for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of people have entered business ownership through a business model that been an owner of, and I still have some very close friends through franchising, and my greatest, brightest moments are when I see somebody reach a pillar of success in their business through a model that I've helped create, and it's meant something meaningful to them, and it provides for their family, it provides jobs for their employees, it provides for them a lifestyle that they want to achieve, and it fulfills so much of my own personal ambitions, and so I can appreciate that. What
for,
are,
for
you know
just
for
real quick,
Go ahead.
recently we've kind of unveiled our retreat. We call them Iron Grit experiences. And through my travels and on stages, literally the number one question I get is, how do I become more mentally tough? And it's only through experiences that you can do that. And then I've come to recognize that most people that are struggling, they can't put themselves through that experience on their own. They need help to do that. And so we've
Yeah.
created experiences to break them down physically, to have emotional breakthroughs, and it's life changing. And to watch people change, because here's the truth, Scott. Like, everybody's struggling, but it's because they're losing the conversations with themselves. And until you fix the way you think and perceive you, and create enough value in yourself, you can't serve your family. You can't be a good employee. You can't be a franchisee. You can't do all of these things. And so for us to be able to put on an event to where over 3 days we see insane transformation of the way people think and the way that they believe their worth is, like, those are amazing moments for us to have.
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to have not only a ripple effect or an effect on their lives, but a ripple effect to their children and their spouse and their friend circles and their businesses. So it's just like we're changing people on a heart and mind level, and then that ripple effect is you just can't measure it.
Yeah, you speak to the mindset aspect, right? And there's I'm a voracious reader. I read a book every couple of weeks, and I love diving into these kinds of things. I didn't know you did this kind of a program, but I think that maybe let's just kind of speak about that for a moment. When you think about mindset, what are you? How do you train mindset? Like I get training your body. Is that in for you? Are those connected, like by training my body and pushing myself to some level that was something I'd not done before, or continue to do something that's very, very difficult? Is that what you're using to train your mindset to develop grit, or would you say no? There's more work that has to start here first before you go and push your body to limits you haven't done before. Where's that nest habit you've got a seed habit you've got to start with?
Yeah, they go hand in hand, Scott. And really, people go too big too quick and they fail, and then they start to associate themselves as a failure. And so, really, the
Yeah.
trick is to start doing really small things that like borderline scare you or are difficult. And as you start to do those small things, that part of your brain, you've heard big guys talk about it, that part of your brain expands, and now more becomes possible. When I first started this journey, I wanted to do one Ironman after I struggled through a
Mm-hmm.
4 mile fun run. So that was as big as I could think. But then now I'm to the point where an Ironman a day can become routine. And so that's a massive paradigm shift, but it starts with small, tiny incremental wins. Success breeds success, confidence breeds confidence. All of that leads to momentum, right? And so, so,
Mm-hmm.
so really, you have your mind and your body. They're one, but the magic comes when they're in sync with each other, and you're conquering both.
So maybe speak to, if you don't mind. Most of our listeners, don't have the. They currently are in a position where their day is, mainly 8, 9, 10 hours, behind the wheel or in an office working, as a franchisor or a franchisee.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? Like, what's the regiment you'd recommend to them to start if they want to get into an Ironman? Where do they go? What resources should they be looking at? Would you say, well, maybe don't start with Ironman. Maybe you should just start just start running first, or is it just start biking first, or like what would you recommend to them? How do they get started to begin developing themselves in this way?
Yeah, super super slow and super super short. That's where most people need to start, especially when they're at the beginning of their journey. We have a free training program that gets people started to get them to the point where they could tackle a full Ironman. But that's the other mistake I see people make is they're like, man, I got so fired up and motivated and I'm empowered. And then they go sign up for an Ironman and they just suffer through it. They get injured. They get burned out.
Yeah.
If you look at every single world champion today, they started short in the Olympic distance at its speed, short speed, building that foundation, building that strength, building that speed, and then lengthen it out to the 70.3, the half Ironman. Then they become champions there, and then they go do an Ironman. So if the pros at
Yeah.
the highest level are building that foundation first, why wouldn't you? And you want to have a really, like I tell my clients all the time, you get one chance, one shot to do your first Ironman. Do you want to like trudge through it, or do you want to have an experience where you're smiling, thanking the volunteers when you get to the finish line, you pound your chest and be like, that was amazing, how can I do that
Yeah.
better, right? That's the experience I want you to have. And if you go from couch to try to do an Ironman in 3 months, like you're going to fail, and it's going to be a terrible experience for you.
Where do we hear? You said you have resources that you give for free to help people prepare. Where do they find that? How do they find this information?
Yeah, if you just go to my link tree on Instagram, or if you go to our website, ironcowboy.com, everything's there.
Awesome. That's I love that you're doing that. We're coming to that point now where anyone of our live attendees, you can feel free to in the chat load any questions you've got for James, whether it be about doing an Ironman or whether it be about mental toughness or grit. Feel free. I'd love to, while we're waiting for that, I'd love to get James kind of talk about you've done your 50-50. You've done the Conquer 100. You've done some incredible things. What is the why that currently drives you today? Like is there a current cause you're behind, or is it trying to transform people? What drives you today to do what you're doing?
Yeah, it's really the impact, and to help other people accomplish their version of what we did. Now, I understand at the highest level that everybody's heart is different, and we're showing up in different capacities, and we look at life through our own unique lenses based on our experiences, perspective, and perception. And really, I want to help people start winning the conversations they're having so they can achieve success with their family, with their business, within their personal lives. Like, our now mission has become to give people hope and to give them the tools, resources, and support they need to be superhuman in every aspect of their lives. Like that's our mission.
I love that, and it must be so fulfilling when you think about if I have the Iron Cowboy at my event, and I've got 700 franchisees present, and they all want to be inspired in some way. What can any franchisor or franchisee expect when they hear the Iron Cowboy speak? What are they looking? What are you sharing with them, and what are you doing that helps get people engaged and want to reach for more?
Yeah, great question. We have a very powerful. I've created a very powerful keynote that I've refined over the past decade, um, to talk to an individual's heart and their mind, and it's just through very compelling storytelling. But here's why we do that the way that we do: is every single event that I've gone into, most people don't know who I am, and I always leave the most memorable, impactful speaker, and it's because I'm talking directly to your mind and your heart. And Ed Milet says it brilliantly that you won't remember what somebody says, but you'll always remember how they make you feel. And
Mm-hmm.
some part of our journey will resonate with exactly where you are in your journey. It's the funnest thing for me to go to an event of leaders with 20 people and just deliver our story and then ask, hey, what was your takeaway? What did you get from that? And for me to get 20 different responses, I've done my job. And it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible to pool an audience of 700, but there would be 150, 100, 250, so many different takeaways, because I'm not coming to your event and being like, hey guys, these are the 4 pillars of excellence and check these 3 boxes and you're going to win. No, man, that's not what I do. And I'm going to resonate with every single person there that's paying attention, because there's some part of our very intense journey that'll match up exactly where you're at on your journey, and then you'll pull from it. I've done the same presentation for a company 4 times in each quarter to a different audience, but the guy that hired me was at all 4 of them, and he said, oh my gosh, it was so incredible, all the changes that you made. I didn't change a damn thing. He was in a
Mm-hmm.
part of his journey, and he got something different out of it. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
greatest movie of all time. You can go watch it 100 times, and you're going to see, pull, or experience it very differently based on your perception, your perspective, and the lens in which you're living your life at that moment.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, James. Before we end, I'd love to get your you mentioned you're writing a book called Iron Hope.
Mm-hmm.
What Tell us more about what that is. What's the goal of that book? What made you decide to author another book like that? What are you hoping to achieve in that enterprise?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The first book, which is right here, it's called
Yeah.
Redefine Impossible. And the way we laid that book out was every other chapter was an autobiography, how we got to this moment. And then every other chapter was about experiences we had on the 50. And over the course of my 20 years of racing and family and business, we've learned a lot. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've done a lot of things right. We've had a lot of missteps. We've had a lot of victories. And in this new book called Iron Hope, it's lessons that we pulled from the Conquer 100 experience, which were many, and also things that we've learned over our entire career. Um, Tips and tricks to help people, exactly what we talked about just a moment ago, getting out of their own way, winning those conversations, and becoming the best version of who they are. And it's just, we've been through a lot, man. And like anybody who's showing up in their life with relentless pursuit, like, you learn shit. Like, you're going to learn stuff. You're going to fail. You're going to try to want to be better. And if you keep showing up, you've got a story to tell. And this book is the purpose. It's the name, Iron Hope. It's to give people hope on their journey, to let them know that yes, you can win. You will win if you keep doing and executing at the level that you were designed to do.
Awesome. Well, before we close, you mentioned the Iron Hope comes out when?
So Iron Hope's not going to come out until January of 2025. It is done.
Okay.
They like to take their time and position it properly.
I
But
like these. They're teasers. I like it.
they are teasers, but we will be releasing the documentary. Like I said, the premiere is March 27th in Sundance, Utah. It's a private event. And then it'll be released shortly after that. And so super excited about that. It's
for those that want to watch that, is that going to be on Netflix, or is it going to be on Amazon, or where do we find it?
Yeah, we anticipate it'll be on those. Our first one was on all those platforms. As soon as we're done with the premiere, then the agency goes to bat for us and puts it on those platforms. It'll for sure be available on our website, ironcowboy.com, March 28th. And then beyond that, it'll be on the streaming platforms.
Well, this has been great. Keep inspiring, James. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all those who participated with us live and those who are watching afterwards. So great. Have a wonderful day, you guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Scott. Peace.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.